Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss on picorna viruses. So these picorna viruses, they are very small viruses. Picorna means pica means very small, and RNA viruses. These are very small RNA viruses which belong to the family Picorna viridae. And there are two important groups which cause the human diseases. They are enteroviruses and rhinoviruses. Enteroviruses, as in the name, they are transmitted by fecal-oral route, that is by oral transmission. And these viruses, they multiply in the intestine, but they do not cause any intestinal manifestations. So there are two important groups of picornaviruses. One is enterovirus and the second one is rhinovirus. Enteroviruses are transmitted by fecal-oral route and they multiply in the intestine, but they do not cause any intestinal manifestation, but they cause the other systemic manifestation, that is poliomyelitis. Today we are going to discuss on this poliomyelitis. Poliomyelitis, it is caused by a virus which belongs to enterovirus. And there are many different serotypes of enteroviruses. There are two important groups, enterovirus and rhinoviruses. And again, in this enterovirus, there are different types like poliovirus, Coxsackie virus, echovirus, paraechovirus, enterovirus. So like this, many different types are there, and they all comprise about 96 different types in enteroviruses. And the other major group is rhinovirus. They are transmitted by respiratory droplets and they cause common cold. Rhinoviruses cause common cold, whereas enteroviruses, they are different types. And one important type, the most important type is poliovirus, which cause poliomyelitis. Coming to the morphology of picorna viruses, they are very simple in structure. They are very small, size only 28 to 30 nanometer size. They are non-enveloped. They are spherical shaped with icosahedral symmetry. They have a capsule composed of 60 subunits, and each subunit again has 4 proteins. Capsule is composed of, outer capsule is composed of 60 subunits, and each subunit will have again 4 proteins, VP1, VP2, VP3 and VP4. And the nucleic acid is single-stranded positive sense RNA, linear RNA, positive sense linear RNA. That is about the morphology. Then resistance. These enteroviruses are stable at acidic pH. They are stable, whereas rhinoviruses are acid labile. And the enteroviruses are heat labile. That means they are sensitive to heat. They are inactivated by heating at 55 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes, which is prevented by magnesium chloride. That's why we have to store these viruses at frozen low temperatures, very low temperatures only. They can be kept in an active stage. Otherwise, they are inactivated at 55 degrees centigrade. Coming to the polioviruses, there are 3 different types of polioviruses. And the 3 different types are type 1, type 2 and type 3. 3 different types. They have different names. Type 1 is called Brownhill and Mahoney strain. Type 2 is the Lancik and MEF1 strain, and type 3 is called the Leon and Socket strain. Like that, polioviruses, how many types are there? There are 3 types of polioviruses, type 1, type 2 and type 3. Type 1, Brownhill and Mahoney strain, it is the most common serotype to cause epidemics. So type 1 is the most common serotype to cause epidemics, and it is the only serotype that is endemic currently in the world. Presently in the world, this is the only serotype that is prevalent. The second type is type 2. Type 2 is called Lancik and MEF1 strain. It is the most antigenic serotype. And this serotype can be easily eradicated. And no natural case of poliomyelitis caused by this type 2 has been reported since 1999. So no case of poliomyelitis is recorded with this type 2 strain. And it is the most common serotype found among VDPV strain. VDPV means vaccine derived poliovirus. You know that poliomyelitis is caused by the attack of this polio virus. But some poliomyelitis can happen after taking vaccine. That is called vaccine-derived poliovirus. Vaccine-derived poliovirus. So type 2 is responsible for that vaccine-derived poliovirus. And the third type is called type 3, Lyon and Socket strain. No natural case caused by type 3 has been reported since 2013, and it is and this strain is responsible for causing VAPP. VAPP means vaccine associated paralytic poliomyelitis. Like that, only after taking vaccine, poliomyelitis. Poliomyelitis occurring after taking vaccine, that is vaccine associated paralytic poliomyelitis. So there are three types of polioviruses: type 1, type 2 and type 3. Type 1, which is the most common serotype to cause epidemics, and presently that is the type 1 is prevalent in the world. Type 2 is almost eradicated. No case of type 2 type is reported since 1999, but it is responsible for VDPV, that is vaccine-derived poliovirus. Type 3 also, no case has been reported since 2013, and it is responsible for VAPP, vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis. There are two important antigens for poliovirus. They are called D antigen and C antigen. D antigen is called dense antigen. It is associated with whole virus and is type specific. The antibodies produced against D antigen, they are anti-D antibodies. They are very protective. The potency of the vaccine can be measured by can be measured in terms of D antigen units. The potency of the vaccine can be measured in terms of this D antigen units. That means this D antigen is very important, and the antibodies produced against the D antigen are protective. The other antigen is the C antigen. It is associated with the non-infectious virus. It is less specific. Anti-C antibody does not neutralize virus infectivity. It is less important than D antigen, and the vaccine potency of the vaccine is measured in terms of this D antigen units. Coming to pathogenesis, you already know that the poliovirus, it is transmitted from person to person by this fecal-oral route, which is the most common mode of transmission, fecal-oral route. And sometimes the transmission can also happen by respiratory droplets by inhalation or by conjunctival contact. But the most common method of transmission of poliovirus is fecal-oral transmission. So after entering into the oral cavity, what happens? It gets attached to this receptor. The receptor is CD155 receptor present on the host cell surface. The virus gets attached to CD155 receptor present on the host cell surface, and it reaches the where in the intestinal epithelial cells. So the virus, it multiplies locally in the intestinal epithelial cells or in the tonsil or in the submucosal lymphoid tissue and Peyer's patches. So it multiplies locally after attaching to the host cell receptor, that is CD155. So the virus is entering into the human body by fecal-oral transmission. Then it is reaching the intestinal epithelial cells or the tonsillar cells, and it is attaching to the host cell receptor, CD155 receptor, and then it starts multiplying locally there in the intestine or in the tonsils or in the Peyer's patches. It multiplies there locally. After multiplication at the local site, then again it spreads finally to the target organ, that is central nervous system or the spinal cord. So it is multiplying locally in the intestine, but is not confined to the intestine. From the intestine, it is spreading to the central nervous system or spinal cord. By two ways, it spreads to the central nervous system in two different routes, that is symptogenous spread or neural spread. So what is symptogenous spread? That is blood spread, which is most common. So virus, it spreads to the regional lymph nodes first, then it spills into the bloodstream. That is called primary viremia. So first it is reaching from the intestinal epithelial cells, it is spreading to regional lymph nodes, and from the lymph nodes it is reaching the bloodstream. So when the virus is present in the blood, it is called primary viremia. And then the multiplication from blood, it reaches the reticuloendothelial system, that is liver, spleen, or bone marrow, or the vascular endothelium. So from blood it is reaching to reticuloendothelial system. There it multiplies again in the reticuloendothelial system, and again for the second time it reaches the bloodstream again, causing secondary viremia. That is called secondary viremia. When the virus enters the bloodstream for the second time from reticuloendothelial system, it is called secondary viremia. And from the blood circulation, it is carried to the target organ, that is spinal cord and brain. So like that, it is reaching the virus, polio virus is reaching from oral cavity to the intestine, from the intestine to the regional lymph nodes, from regional lymph nodes to the blood circulation, that is primary viremia, from blood circulation again to reticuloendothelial system, that is liver, spleen, or bone marrow, like that, reticuloendothelial system, again to the bloodstream, and finally the virus is reaching spinal cord and brain. That is hematogenous spread or blood spread, which is the most common route. Other spread is the neural spread, which occurs after tonsillectomy. After tonsillectomy, the virus may spread via glossopharyngeal nerve present in the tonsillar fossa and reaches the spinal cord and brain. This is the mode of spread of the virus to the target organ. Then after reaching the target organ, that is spinal cord or brain, where it is acting at the motor nerve ending, anterior horn cells of the spinal cord, and leads to muscle weakness and paralysis. The type of paralysis is flaccid paralysis. So it is reaching the spinal cord, and spinal cord, after reaching the spinal cord, where it is at the mode of the site of action of the virus is in the motor nerve ending, anterior horn cells of the spinal cord. And what is causing to the nerve? It is causing neuronal degeneration. Earliest change seen is the neuronal degeneration of the Nissl body. Nissl body are present in the neurons. They are aggregated ribosomes normally found in the cytoplasm of the neurons. So this polio virus is causing degeneration of the Nissl body or the neurons. Nissl body is present in the neurons, and this virus is causing that degeneration of the Nissl body or the neurons. Pathological changes are also seen, and they are more extensive. Pathological changes are also observed. What are the clinical manifestations? So it takes 7 to 14 days for the manifestations to appear. That is, the incubation period is 7 to 14 days. And the manifestations range from asymptomatic stage to severe paralytic stage. So the symptoms may be, they can be of the following ways: inapparent infection or abortive infection, or non-paralytic poliomyelitis or paralytic poliomyelitis. So the infection manifests in 4 different ways. 91 to 96% they have this inapparent infection or asymptomatic cases. 91 to 96% of them will have this asymptomatic condition, that means without any symptoms, and that is called inapparent infection. 5% of the patients will have this abortive infection. 5% will have this abortive infection, that means they have minor illness which is manifested with fever, malaise, sore throat, anorexia, myalgia, and headache. Only 5% will have this abortive type of infection with minor symptomology. And 1% will have non-paralytic poliomyelitis. 1% manifest with the non-paralytic poliomyelitis, that is aseptic meningitis. They will have only aseptic, they will have this aseptic meningitis condition, and don't have any paralysis. And less than 1% will have this paralytic poliomyelitis. This is the least common form. Paralytic poliomyelitis is seen in only less than 1% cases, and it is characterized by descending asymmetric acute flaccid paralysis. It is characterized by paralysis. What type of paralysis it is? Acute flaccid paralysis, and it is descending asymmetric type. Descending asymmetric acute flaccid paralysis. That means only a single limb may be involved, lower limb or upper limb, single limb may be involved. That is asymmetric acute flaccid paralysis. And the muscle involvement is also, there is variation in the muscle involvement. Proximal muscles are affected more than the earlier than the distal muscles. Distal muscles, proximal muscles both are affected. But first proximal muscles are affected earlier than the distal muscles, and the paralysis goes downwards from proximal to distal. The paralysis starts at the hip and then it proceeds downwards towards the extremities, and it results in a characteristic tripod sign. Tripod sign means the child will be having weakness in his hip region. Weakness is seen in the hip region. So he sits with flexed hip with both arms extended towards the back for support. That is called the tripod sign. The child sitting with flexed hip with both arms extended towards the back for support. That is called tripod sign. In the site of involvement, it can be the viral poliovirus. It can attack the spinal region or the bulbospinal or the bulbar region. Sometimes we can see this biphasic course. What is this biphasic course in children? Some children, I told you, 1% will have this aseptic meningitis condition. So after aseptic meningitis, the child will have recovery. So the recovery is not continued, but again there is a chance of fever, return of fever with paralytic features in 1 to 2 days later. That is called the biphasic course. First there is a meningitis, aseptic meningitis, a phase of recovery. Then again the fever is seen with the paralytic features. That is the biphasic course is sometimes seen in some cases. Cranial involvement is also seen, but there is no sensory loss. Sensations are felt, there is no sensory loss, but cranial involvement is seen. This is paralytic poliomyelitis. So, poliomyelitis manifestations, there are 4 types of manifestations. One is majority of the cases will have inapparent infection, 5% will have abortive infection, 1% will be manifested with non-paralytic poliomyelitis, and less than 1% will have paralytic poliomyelitis. And the type of poliomyelitis paralysis is descending asymmetric acute flaccid paralysis. Okay, the child will have this tripod sign. So you can see in this picture, descending asymmetric acute flaccid paralysis. That is, one limb is normal, the other limb is paralyzed. Here in the upper limb, you can see the paralysis. Risk factors. Who are more prone? Young children are more prone than adults, than pregnant women, those who do heavy muscular exercise, persons undergoing trauma at the time of CNS symptoms, those who undergo this tonsillectomy operation, they are predisposed to bulbar poliomyelitis. And those who take intramuscular injections, they have increased risk of paralysis in the involved limb. So these are the risk factors for developing poliomyelitis. There is a condition called post-polio muscle atrophy syndrome, which is observed in individuals which occur decades after the episode of paralytic poliomyelitis. So, after 20 to 40 years, you can see this condition, atrophy. The muscle wasting and muscle atrophy is seen 20 to 40 years after the episode of paralytic poliomyelitis. That is called post-polio muscle atrophy syndrome. Coming to the laboratory diagnosis, you can isolate the virus, that is viral isolation can be done. The samples include throat swab, rectal swab, or stool samples, CSF or blood. From these samples you can isolate the virus. Long-term excretion is seen in immunodeficient persons. So the virus is heat labile, so it should be transported in a frozen condition. It should be kept frozen during transport to the laboratory. And where it is isolated, the virus is isolated in cell lines, especially primary monkey kidney cell lines, And the virus growth can be identified by various methods like cytopathogenic effects, which are seen in 3 to 6 days. Crenation and degeneration of the entire cell sheet can be seen. After growing the virus in cell lines like primary monkey kidney cell line, you can see the cytopathogenic effect. You can see the cytopathogenic effect. Changes in the cell lines. What are the changes? Crenation and degeneration of the entire cell sheet. Otherwise, antigen detection can be done with neutralization test with specific anti-serum or immunofluorescence. Molecular tests like PCR assay is also available targeting VP1 region of the polio virus. This is virus isolation. Antibodies can also be detected. Rising titer of antibody in paid sera, which is collected 1 to 2 week interval, is recommended. So, first week you collect the serum, patient serum, and you check the antibody level, and after 1 to 2 weeks you again collect the second serum sample, that is paired sera, and you have to check for the rising antibody titer. Both neutralizing antibodies, complement fixing antibodies can be detected, and those antibodies are tested with neutralization test or complement fixation test. On first infection with poliovirus produce strictly type-specific antibodies. First infection only will give type-specific antibodies. Subsequent infections, they induce antibodies against group-specific antigen, which are common to all 3 serotypes. So like that, with antibodies also we can test, we can diagnose the polioviral infection. Rising titer of antibodies, neutralizing antibodies, complement fixing antibodies can be detected in the patient's serum. Molecular methods are also available. They are real-time multiplex reverse transcriptase PCR is there. It is being developed using primers from VP1 region. Primers are available from VP1 region. They detect and differentiate between various types of wild and vaccine polioviruses. So vaccine polioviruses are also there. They are VAPP and VDPV strains, and this can be directly detected from the stool sample. So molecular methods are also there to detect and differentiate the various types of wild and vaccine polioviruses. Vaccine is there for poliomyelitis. Polio vaccine is available. So 2 types of vaccines are there: inactivated polio vaccine and live polio vaccine. Inactivated is the injectable Salk polio vaccine. It is called the Salk or injectable polio vaccine, which is the inactivated polio vaccine. And the second one is oral polio vaccine, which is called Sabin type. So this inactivated polio vaccine, it is prepared from monkey kidney cell line. Monkey kidney cell line, it is formalin-killed preparation from monkey kidney cell line, and the vaccine consists of 80 units of D antigen. 80 units of D antigen, type 1, type 2 and type 3. Type 1 40 units, type 2 8 units, and type 3 is 32 units. And this live attenuated oral polio vaccine, in the dose, each dose consists of type 1, type 2 and type 3 types again. Type 1 is 3 lakh units, type 2 1 lakh unit, and type 3 is 3 lakh units. How will you know the markers of attenuation, or what are the properties of the vaccine virus? The phenotypic markers and genotypic markers are there. Phenotypic markers is the virus, the vaccine virus will not grow in presence of low levels of bicarbonate or at 40 degrees centigrade. That is a phenotypic marker. And the genotypic marker is it detects specific genes of attenuated virus. That is the genotypic marker. These are the markers of attenuation or the properties of vaccine virus. The dosage of injectable polio vaccine is 4 doses. First 3 doses is given at 1 to 2 months gap, and 4th is the booster dose given 6 to 12 months later. And OPV, there are 5 doses. First dose is called 0 dose. It is given at birth, and second, third, fourth doses are given at 6 and 14 weeks, and booster dose is given 16 to 24 months of age. Again, some differences between injectable and oral polio vaccine. This is relatively safer. Injectable polio vaccine is relatively safer than oral polio vaccine. Oral polio vaccine is also safe except in immunocompromised patients and pregnancy and old age people. So it is little bit, it causes some side effects in this condition, in this risk. These are the risk group persons, immunocompromised persons, pregnancy and old age. It is injectable polio vaccine is safer than oral polio vaccine. Efficacy, OPV is more efficient. It has 90 to 100% efficiency. The efficiency is 80 to 90%. But the efficiency of oral polio virus is 90 to 100%. Economy, this is oral polio vaccine is economical. This is a little bit expensive. Injectable polio vaccine is expensive. This is economical. Oral polio vaccine is economical. Duration of protection. The protection is long lasting with OPV. The duration of protection is short with IPV, injectable polio vaccine, and it requires booster doses periodically. In epidemics, OPV can be used safely in epidemics, but there is danger in using this injectable polio vaccine as it can precipitate paralysis. Herd immunity is provided with OPV due to fecal-oral spread of vaccine virus. The vaccine virus spreads in the community by this fecal-oral spread. So herd immunity is provided. Injectable polio vaccine, herd immunity is not provided. Local immunity is also strongly stimulated with OPV than IPV. Injectable polio vaccine, local immunity is weakly stimulated. IPV can prevent only paralysis, whereas oral polio vaccine can prevent paralysis as well as intestinal reinfection. The storage condition for oral polio vaccine is stringent conditions. It should be stored at minus 20 degrees centigrade and it should be stabilized in magnesium chloride and pH should be less than 7. Stringent conditions are not required for injectable polio vaccine. They are relatively stable. VAPP and VDPV, we will see now about this VAPP and VDPV. There is zero chance with injectable polio vaccine. There is more chance of VAPP and VDPV with the oral polio vaccine. These are some differences between injectable polio vaccine and oral polio vaccine. You know, we in the pulse polio immunization program, we give this oral polio vaccine. Oral polio vaccine is given. This is the course of OPV. This is in the immunization, you have to give universal immunization, you have to give this dose, and again if there is pulse polio immunization, in that also you have to give other extra doses. The dosage in pulse polio immunization are the extra doses, but this is the universal immunization schedule of OPV. So next, what is this vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis? That is poliomyelitis occurring after intake of vaccine. After taking vaccine, the child will develop paralytic poliomyelitis. That is called vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis. VAPP means vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis, denotes all the cases of paralytic poliomyelitis that occur following OPV administration. So the VAPP strains are like OPV like isolates, like oral polio virus, like virus only, oral polio virus like isolates. So this paralytic poliomyelitis is occurring following oral polio virus administration. After intake of the vaccine, the poliomyelitis is seen, paralytic poliomyelitis. It is called vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis, which show limited genetic divergence from their parental OPV strains. That is, the genetic divergence is less than 1% divergence is seen. And where it is seen, VAPP strains are seen. It is ubiquitous in places where OPV is used extensively. So in those places, VAPP strains are more and can occur among OPV recipients as well as to their close contacts. Not only to the OPV recipients, to their close contacts also you can see this VAPP. But they are not capable of circulating in the community. They don't circulate in the community, and so they don't cause any outbreaks. So it is seen especially in immunocompromised people, VAPP. VAPP is seen especially in some immunodeficient children, and It is seen in places where OPV is used extensively. The rate is very rare. It is one case per 2.5 million doses of OPV. So in 2.5 million doses of OPV, one case will have this condition, VAPP. And VAPP occurs most frequently following first dose of OPV, then subsequent doses, and is seen especially in immunodeficient children. It is seen with immunodeficient children. The risk increases by 3,000 fold. So the chance of that is the disadvantage of OPV usage with immunodeficient children. So it is again precipitating paralytic poliomyelitis after the vaccine. So that is a one disadvantage of using OPV. In such conditions, you have to better to use injectable polio vaccine. If the child is having any immunodeficiency disorder, better go with injectable polio vaccine, because there is a chance of vaccine associated paralytic poliomyelitis. And which type is more common with VAPP? Sabin type 3 is followed by Sabin type 2. Most common serotype associated with VAPP is Sabin type 3 followed by Sabin type 2. The second type is vaccine-derived polioviruses. This is also after giving the vaccine, the child develops poliomyelitis. This is vaccine-derived poliovirus. They exhibit high level of genetic divergence from their parental OPV strains at VPV1 sequence. In vaccine-associated genetic divergence is less than 1%. Here, that is the difference between vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis and vaccine-derived VAPP and VDPV. What is the difference? The genetic divergence is more in VDPV, whereas genetic divergence is less in VAPP. How much is the genetic divergence? More than 1% for Sabin type 1 and 3 and more than 0.6% for Sabin type 2. The isolates showing genetic divergence lower than this are called OPV-like isolates. If the genetic divergence is very less, that is less than 1%, they are again called as OPV-like isolates. The VDPV isolates belong to Sabin type 2. So VDPV is more in Sabin type 2. They belong to Sabin type 2, whereas VAPP, they belong to Sabin type 3. The serotype associated with VAPP is Sabin type 3, whereas the serotype associated with VDPV is Sabin type 2. There are some categories in vaccine VDPVs. There are 3 different categories. One is circulating VDPV. Circulating VDPV means they are capable of person-to-person transmission in community and can cause outbreaks in areas with low OPV coverage. They are capable of person-to-person transmission. That's why they are called circulating VDPVs, and they pose the same threat to the community as that of wild polio virus. So, like wild polio virus, they pose the same threat to the community, and most circulating VDPV isolates have vaccine or non-vaccine recombinant genomes. The first category is circulating VDPV. Vaccine VDPVs, again, there are 3 types. 3 categories are there. One is circulating VDPV. Circulating VDPV means they are capable of person-to-person transmission and they pose the same threat to the community as that of wild polio virus. That is circulating VDPV. Since 2000, circulating VDPV outbreaks have occurred in 18 countries. So this type of VDPV occurred in 18 countries and it is associated with type 2. The cases reported are associated with type 2. And in 2013, over 700 strains of this VDPVs have been isolated worldwide, including India, and Nigeria is the worst affected. The circulating VDPVs in 2013, there are again 700 different strains of VDPVs have been isolated. Even in India, we have seen this circulating VDPV in 2013, and Nigeria is the place where it is worst affected. That means more number of cases, strains are observed in Nigeria. The second category is immunodeficiency associated VDPV. It is called IVDPV. IVDPV is isolated from persons with primary immunodeficiency disorder. They do not develop disease but excrete the IDPVs for many years. So they excrete this virus for many years. And the contacts infected with IVDPV strains at increased risk of developing paralytic poliomyelitis. So the persons who are suffering from primary immunodeficiency disorder will carry this IVDPV. IVDPV means immunodeficiency associated paralytic poliovirus, and those persons will be excreting this strain, and the contacts infected with this strain are at increased risk of developing paralytic poliomyelitis. Genetic diversity is more than 10%. Unlike circulating VDPV, infection due to IVDPV cannot be prevented by high OPV coverage. They are difficult to treat with this oral polio vaccine. Another third category is ambiguous VDPV. It is written as AVDPV. These are heterogeneous. They may be sewage isolates obtained from developed countries with unknown source. They are called ambiguous VDPV. May be isolated from sewages obtained from developed countries. So seen in the sewages from developed countries, they are heterogeneous and they are called ambiguous VDPVs. So there are three different types of VDPVs. One is circulating VDPV, second one is immunodeficiency VDPV, third one is ambiguous VDPV. After taking vaccine, two types of vaccines are there. No, what are they? Inactivated or injectable or Salk vaccine, or the second one is oral polio vaccine or Sabin vaccine, which is live polio vaccine. You know some different. You have to know these differences between injectable and oral polio vaccine. So after intake of vaccine, there may be occurrence of paralytic poliomyelitis. That is called vaccine-associated paralytic poliomyelitis (VAPP). VAPP, and it is very rare condition, seen one case for 2.45 million doses of OPV, seen especially in immunodeficiency disorder, seen in cases with immunodeficiency disorder. And the second type is vaccine-derived poliovirus, where the genetic divergence is more. And there are again three categories in vaccine-derived poliovirus: circulating VDPV, immunodeficiency associated VDPV, and ambiguous VDPV. Okay. Now coming to epidemiology, man is the only reservoir. And what is the clinical subclinical ratio? For every one clinical case, there will be 1,000 subclinical cases in children. In case of children, or for every clinical case, there will be 75 adults with subclinical manifestations. There is no carrier state. There will be no carriers except in immunodeficient individuals. The source of infection is stool and oropharyngeal secretions. Age, young children and infants are more susceptible than adults. Period of communicability, the virus is shed in the feces from 7 to 10 days before the onset of symptoms, up to 2 to 3 weeks thereafter, sometimes as long as 3 to 4 months. That is the period of communicability. 7 to 10 days or 2 to 3 weeks thereafter, or it can go up to as long as 3 to 4 months also. The virus is shed in the feces and it is transmitted by fecal-oral transmission. Polio eradication, we have this pulse polio immunization program which is conducted globally. Pulse polio immunization program PPI is being conducted globally, which is the extensive immunization program. It was initiated globally to eradicate. Why this program was initiated? To eradicate poliomyelitis. In India, it was in operation since 1995-96. So it started, pulse polio immunization program started from 95. 2 rounds of PPI, 6 weeks apart, is scheduled every year during the winter season, where all children under the age of 5 years. So all children under the age of 5 years, irrespective of their OPV vaccination status, should take this 2 doses of pulse polio immunization. Should take this pulse polio vaccine. Oral polio vaccine is given in pulse polio immunization program, and irrespective of their vaccination schedule. So they will be having their universal, in the universal immunization program, OPV will be given. So irrespective of that universal immunization, they should take this pulse polio vaccine, oral polio vaccine given during pulse polio immunization program. PPE doses of OPV are considered as extra doses and they do not replace the OPV doses received under the routine national immunization schedule. So the countries, they are classified based on their polio transmission status as of July 2018. And the countries are classified as endemic countries or outbreak country or key at risk countries, polio free countries. India is tagged as polio free country. India and rest and other 194 countries are there. They are under polio free countries. That is, no transmission of indigenous wild polio virus is seen. No wild case for more than 3 years. Then they'll be given as the polio free country. What is endemic country? Ongoing transmission of indigenous wild polio virus will be transmission is there. That's why they are called endemic countries. Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria are the endemic countries for polio transmission. What are outbreak countries? They stopped indigenous wild polio but are experiencing reinfection with the VDPV like that. So reinfection is happening with the VDPV strains. They are called outbreak countries. Examples are Democratic Republic of Congo, Syrian Arabic Republic, Somalia. These countries are called outbreak countries because they are experiencing reinfection with VDPV strains. What are key at risk countries? Key at risk countries means the immunity levels are low in these countries, 17 countries. Surveillance leave countries at risk of polio returning. So the immunity level in the children are low in these 17 countries. Cameroon, Central African Republic, Myanmar, Nigeria, then Sierra Leone, Somalia. Some African countries are also there. So in these 17 countries, the immunity levels are low. They are called key at risk countries. So basing on that polio transmission status as of July 2018, they are classified as endemic country, outbreak country, key at risk country, polio free country, and India falls in polio free countries. That is, no transmission of wild polio virus is occurring in more than 3 years. Endgame strategic plan, Global Polio Eradication Initiative. They have initiated an endgame strategic plan because pulse polio is on the verge of eradication. They have initiated an endgame strategic plan for polio eradication, which has 4 objectives. What are the 4 objectives? Interruption of polio virus transmission, strengthening immunization system stepwise, withdrawal of OPV and switching over to IPV. So strengthening the immunization system, implementing containment of polio virus and to certify the world as polio free. That is the 3rd objective. And legacy planning, the infrastructure, fund, manpower, knowledge, experience that have been created through the global polio program will be utilized to support other health programs following post-polio eradication. So after polio is eradicated, what they will do, all the funds, the knowledge, experience, they will be utilized to support other health programs, that is legacy planning. So they have given 4 objectives, and GPEI, Global Polio Eradication Initiative, initiated 4 objectives. What are those 4 objectives? In endgame strategic plan, interruption of polio virus transmission, strengthening immunization system with IPV, implementing containment of polio virus and to certify the world as polio free, and legacy planning. These are the 4 objectives taken by GPEI in endgame strategic plan. So there are other viruses in enteroviruses. 2 groups are there, no, enteroviruses and rhinoviruses. Till now we have seen about poliovirus. The other viruses belonging in enterovirus are Coxsackie virus, named after the place of discovery. Coxsackie is a village in USA. They are divided into 2 groups, Coxsackie A and B. Coxsackie group A and Coxsackie group B. So there are some differences in the manifestations of group A and group B. Coxsackie group A causes flaccid paralysis, whereas group B causes spastic paralysis. They cause generalized myositis. This group B causes focal myositis. Some clinical differences in the clinical manifestations of Coxsackie group A and Coxsackie group B. Coxsackie group A causes aseptic meningitis, herpangina, means vesicular pharyngitis, hand, foot, mouth disease, acute hemorrhagic conjunctivitis. Whereas group B will cause more organ involvement, aseptic meningitis, pleurodynia, epidemic myalgia or Bronholm disease, myocarditis, pericarditis, hepatitis, pancreatitis, diabetes mellitus, pneumonia, generalized disease of infants. These are the organ involvement caused by Coxsackie group B viruses. How will you diagnose Coxsackie viruses? The sample is throat swab, stool and CSF sample. Then viral isolation can be done by inoculating the sample into suckling mice. Group A will produce flaccid paralysis. Group B will produce spastic paralysis to the suckling mice. And tissue culture methods are also available. Cytopathic effects can be observed. Molecular methods like PCR is available, targeting the VP1 gene. And serology tests can also be done by to detect the antibodies, neutralizing antibodies. That is the laboratory diagnosis of Coxsackie viruses. Other enteroviruses we have seen are enterovirus 68, which causes pneumonia. Enterovirus 70 causes acute hemorrhagic conjunctivitis. Enterovirus 17 will cause aseptic meningitis, encephalitis, herpangina, pulmonary edema. Enterovirus 72 is reclassified as hepatitis A virus. So these are the other enteroviruses other than poliovirus and Coxsackie virus. What are these echoviruses? Echo means enteric cytopathogenic human orphan viruses. They infect human intestine and they can be isolated in certain tissue cultures. They cause outbreaks in summer, especially among children. They are called echoviruses. They are also enteroviruses. Now the second group is the rhinovirus. Apart from enterovirus, what is the second group? Rhinovirus. They are the most common cause of common cold. Human rhinovirus comprise 3 species, A, B, C, and more than 150 antigen types are there. What does this rhinovirus cause? They cause common cold syndrome. Rhinoviral symptoms are similar to that of any other viruses causing common cold syndrome, such as coronavirus, adenovirus, enterovirus, parainfluenza virus, and influenza virus. So this rhinovirus, what do they cause? They cause common cold, like any other viruses. These are the other viruses causing cold symptoms, common cold symptoms. That is about rhinovirus. That is about picornaviruses. So in picornaviruses, you have seen 2 groups, enteroviruses and rhinoviruses. In detail, we have studied poliovirus. Poliovirus, which is an enterovirus. Poliovirus comes in enterovirus. So in enterovirus, polioviruses and Coxsackie viruses are also observed in enterovirus. That is about picornavirus. That is the end of the class. Thank you.